The political stage here in Sri Lanka is getting heated as the days draw closer to the presidential election 2024. Good evening and welcome. This is Primetime News on TV1. I'm Charlene Benedict for the Newsfirst team.
And I'm Dithmini De Silva. Let's start off with a look at your headlines.
President calls a meeting of the ruling faction. Anuradhapura SLPP group pledges support to Ranil Wickremesinghe. SM Chandrasena's proposal approved. State Minister Premitha Bandara Tennakon says majority of MPs support Ranil Wickremesinghe. Politburo meeting is concerning. Who divided the government? A response from Namal Rajapaksa.
අපි නෙවෙයි ආණ්ඩුව බෙදුවේ. බස් ස්ටෑන්ඩ් වල ජනාධිපති අපේක්ෂකවරු යෝජනා කරපු අය තමයි මේ ආණ්ඩුව කැඩෙන වැඩ කරේ.
Resolve the issue on the IGP. Election Commission decides to inform the president. A Chinese research vessel near the sea of Sri Lanka. Again.
Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka decides.
Sri Lanka decides.
As we draw closer to the presidential election, the political atmosphere here in Sri Lanka continues to get heated. Now, a special meeting of the ruling faction parliamentarians was convened today. The meeting was held at the Presidential Secretariat and it was chaired by President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Earlier in the evening, the President's media division issued a statement stating that 92 parliamentarians have pledged their support to President Ranil Wickremesinghe at the upcoming presidential election.
The Politburo of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna convened yesterday and a unanimous decision was reached to field a candidate under the symbol of the flower bud for the upcoming presidential election. 11 MPs had rejected the proposal during the meeting. A group of SLPP MPs met the president at his official residence following the Politburo meeting. This morning, MP Premnath Sidolavatta said around 75 SLPP MPs expressed support to the president during the meeting. President Ranil Wickremesinghe posted on social media last evening, welcoming those joining him now. He said, quote, "Our mission to build a prosperous, united Sri Lanka is ongoing and we need every willing hand to make it a reality," unquote.
During a Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna meeting in the Anuradhapura district, chaired by MP SM Chandrasena, activists asserted that the SLPP must support Ranil Wickremesinghe in the upcoming presidential election. MP Chandrasena invited party activists and local political leaders to the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna district office in Anuradhapura. During the meeting, he asked the attendees whom the SLPP must support in the upcoming presidential election.
මම දන්නවා කවුරු ජයග්‍රහණය කරත් 22 නැත්නම් සැප්තැම්බර් 23 පාර්ලිමේන්තුවත් විසිරවනවා. එතකොට මේ ඡන්දෙට යන්න ඕන අපි අපේක්ෂකව හැටියට තරඟ කරනවා. ඉතින් ඒකට සහයෝගයේ සමුන්නාන්සයන් ලබා ගැනීම අපට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය වෙනවා. අපි හිතුවක්කාර විදිහට තීන්දුව ගත්තොත් ඒකේ ප්‍රතිඵල තව මාස දෙකකින් අපටත් අත් වෙනවා. ඒ නිසා මම ගුණදොස් කියන්නේ නැහැ. පොහොට්ටුව හොඳද රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ ජනාධිපතිතුමා හොඳයිද කියන එක. ජනතාවත් එක්ක නිරන්තරයෙන්ම දේහවස ගැටෙන අය හැටියට සමුන්නාන්සලා තමයි අද පොළොවේ බිමේ තියෙන තත්ත්වය දන්නේ. ඒ අනුව තමයි සමුන්නාන්සලාගේ ප්‍රතිචාර සමුන්නාන්සලා අපිට දක්වන්නේ. වැඩි කැමැත්ත වහාට කියන එක අත්ඔසවලා අපිට ලබා දෙන්න. ඊට පස්සේ අපි පක්ෂයට දැනුම් දෙනවා එකට යන්න අවශ්‍යයි කියන පිරිස සහ රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ ජනාධිපතිතුමා උදව් කරන්න ඕන කියන පිරිස කොච්චරද ඒ වගේම පොහොට්ටුවත් එක්ක ඉන්න පිරිස කොච්චරද කියන එක. ඊට පස්සේ තවත් අපේක්ෂකයෙක් ඉදිරිපත් කළා නැහැ. පොජාන පෙරමුණ තවත් කාලේ තියෙනවා ජනතාවගේ අදහස් සුදාස් වලට එකතුව කටයුතු කරන්න. රනිල් ජනාධිපතිතුමා උදව් කරන්න පක්ෂයේ හැටියට අවශ්‍යයි කියන අය
Two among the attendees expressed their preference for a candidate from the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna.
State Minister Premitha Bandaranathengakone and Shehan Semasinghe, speaking during a media briefing at Ranil Wickremesinghe's election campaign office in Colombo, said a majority of Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna MPs support Ranil Wickremesinghe.
ඊයේ දිනේ දේශපාලන මණ්ඩලය නාට්‍යයක් සාමාන්‍යයෙන් පොදුජන පෙරමුණේ
Yesterday's Politburo meeting was merely for show. We don't believe the SLPP has a democratic framework to reach decisions. We have concerns regarding the composition of yesterday's Politburo meeting. In a party with around 100 MPs, only 18 MPs, 5 provincial councillors and 5 heads of local government institutions were present for the meeting. We are unaware of who else was at the meeting. We don't know them and it is concerning as to how they were at the meeting. The decision reached yesterday is similar to the decision reached on the 9th of May 2022 to bring a crowd to Colombo to attack the Aragalaya.
කොළඹට සෙනග ගෙනල්ලා අරගලයට ගහන්න ගත්තු තීන්දුව හා සමානයි ඊයේ ගත්තු තීන්දුව.
The State Minister also questioned why it took 2 years to realise that Ranil Wickremesinghe's policies were inconsistent with the party policies.
දැන් ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොදුජන පෙරමුණේ තර්කය තමයි රනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ ජන
The SLPP is now arguing that Ranil Wickremesinghe's policies don't align with the SLPP. It is regretful that it took 2 years to understand this.
කාලයක් යාම පිළිබඳව අපි කනගාටු වෙනවා. ඒ වෙලාවේ ගැලපුණු දැන් නොගැලපෙන හඳහන මොකක්ද කියලා අපි ප්‍රශ්න කරනවා. ඒ නිසාම ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොදුජන පෙරමුණ නියෝජනය කරන අති බහුතර
So majority of SLPP MPs decided to convene at the Presidential Secretariat at 5:30 p.m. today. Our group has already decided to support the President. Understand the ground reality. It is regretful that decisions are reached based on personal agendas over the SLPP members.
න්‍යාය පත්‍රයකට තීන්දුව తీරන ගැනීම පිළිබඳව අපේ කනගාටුව අපි නැවත නැවත ප්‍රකාශ කරනවා.
ඊයේ අපේ කියපු හැටියට ඔබතුමාලගේ සමාජිකත්වය අවශ්‍ය කරනවා කියලා ඔබතුමාලට පිළිය පියවර ගන්නවා කියලා.
මේ වෙලාවේ අපි වගකීමෙන්
We are reaching this decision for the sake of the country's progress and security and for the country's future. Party membership and ministerial posts don't matter.
වෙන්නේ නැහැ. පොහොට්ටුව දෙකට කැඩෙන බව අපි නායක
We informed the leadership earlier that SLPP will be divided. We held a discussion with President Mahinda Rajapaksa on Thursday before this decision was reached. We informed him of the fate that will befall the party if such a decision was reached.
ලංකා පොදුජන පෙරමුණට අත්වෙන්න නියමිත බව අපි දැනුම්
මතක තියාගන්න 2022 අර්බුදයේදී අරගලයේදී ඒකත් තීන්දුව කරේ සීමිත පිරිසක්. ඒ අයට ඕන විදිහට තමයි ඒක සංවිධානය කරේ.
During the 2022 crisis, the decision regarding the Aragalaya was reached by a limited number of people. It was organized the way they wanted. One group was harassed with the dangerous situation that arose. Their houses were set on fire and the country's democracy was at risk. The country lost hope. Is the SLPP trying to implement the same cycle again? This limited group is trying to put the divisional leaders and SLPPers at risk. It is a regrettable situation. There is still time. Listen to the opinion of the SLPPers. If not, you will only have the few people who reached this decision.
සූදානම් වෙන්න ඔබට නැත්තම් ඉතුරු වෙන්නේ ඔය තීන්දුව ගන්න කටයුතු කරපු කීප දෙනා පමණයි.
The decision reached by the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna yesterday was discussed at the cabinet media briefing today.
As the leader who presented a clear national program for the future of the country, we accept President Ranil Wickremesinghe as the leader who the country should be handed over once again, and we are working towards that.
පොදුජන පෙරමුණ නියෝජනය කරන മന്ത്രിවරු අමාත්‍යවරු කී දෙනෙක් ජනාධිපතිතුමාට සහාය දෙන්න තීරණය කළා තියෙනවද?
ඒක ජනාධිපතිවරු
You will be able to see that closer to the election. As far as I know, there is a large number who supports him. As cabinet ministers, myself, Minister Prasanna Ranatunga, Minister Ramesh Pathirana and Minister Kanchana Wijesekara have informed our party clearly of our support for the President. The party also passed a resolution stating that members who do not support the candidate of the Pohottua will be subject to disciplinary action from the party. We also voted in favour of that resolution. That resolution was also passed unanimously.
Is the SLPP prepared for Ranil Wickremesinghe as a party?
I think that is a matter of the policy. I don't think it is his fault. It is the way the UNP is. We said from the start that we discuss our policies with political parties. This is what happens when you try to form governments by approaching individuals. We did not divide the government. It is the people who proposed the names of presidential candidates at bus stands that acted in a manner that broke this government. Until yesterday, we fulfilled our responsibilities and our responsibilities as a government. We fulfilled our responsibilities in parliament. We did not say anything to hurt their feelings even on the political stage. We are a group that understands duties and responsibilities and a group that knows how to engage in politics within an alliance.
Did Namal betray Ranil? Who is the opponent of the SLPP? Will the North get the 13th Amendment? Namal's next target. Tune in to Ilakaya on Wednesday at 10:30 p.m.
Meanwhile, Udayanga Viratunga, the former ambassador of Sri Lanka to Russia, said that businessman Dhammika Perera is a candidate of Sri Lanka Podujana Perumana.
I say today that Dhammika Perera will be announced as the presidential candidate of Pohottuwa next Wednesday as the only leader capable of building the future economy of the country. Basil Rajapaksa, who has a deep understanding of politics.
බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂ කියන්නේ ජේෂ්ඨ දේශපාලනය ගැන ඉතාම හොඳින් දන්න බැසිල් අයියා ලස්සනට අර මෛත්‍රී ආපකාලා ගියා වගේ රනිල් එක්ක ඉඳලා හොඳ ටොක්කක් ඊයන්දා. එතනින් නතර වෙන්නේ නැහැ බැසිල් රාජපක්ෂ. අද කිව්වා කියලා හිතන්න.
Dhammika Perera will be announced as the presidential candidate of the SLPP and Basil Rajapaksa will only stop after making him the next president. I am so sure about this because there is no network more stronger than the Pohottuwa network.
නැහැ.
Chairman of the United National Party, Vajrabe Wardana, said that whether or not a third civil war will erupt in the country will depend on how the people cast their vote at the upcoming presidential election. He made these remarks during a press conference held at the Presidential Media Centre yesterday.
පැරණි ක්‍රමවේද ඔස්සේ දේශපාලන පක්ෂවලට ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ අනාගතය හැසිර
Political parties will not be able to shape Sri Lanka's future using outdated methods. The country has experienced multiple rebellions and civil wars. The crucial question for the upcoming presidential election on the 21st September is whether Sri Lankans will use their votes to incite another civil war or to prevent such unrest among civilians. The public must be vigilant of this. If citizens make decisions based on traditional, religious, political or caste-based ideologies, those organizations must bear the responsibility of a third war erupting in the country. This is the most important thing that all political parties in Sri Lanka must remember.
ඒ සංවිධාන විසින් බාරගත යුතුව තිබෙනවා. එය තමයි ශ්‍රී ලංකාවේ දේශපාලන පක්ෂ මතක තබා ගත යුතු වැදගත්ම කාරණය.
The National Election Commission says a letter has been sent to President Ranil Wickremesinghe requesting him to resolve the controversy surrounding the appointment of the Inspector General of Police as soon as possible. These steps were taken following a discussion that was held today.
අපේ ආණ්ඩුක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථාව අනුව ජනාධිපතිවරයා ඔහුගේ දුර කාලය නිශ්චිත අවුරුදු 5 අවසන් තෙක්
According to the Constitution, the President will continue to serve as the President until the conclusion of his 5-year term. Also, according to this Act, the election should be held 1 month before or within 1 month of that time. After the election is held, the new President will be sworn in based on the results of the election held. Article 33 of the Constitution includes the powers and functions of the President. Article 33(4) D says that the president has to prepare the necessary environment for the commission to conduct a free and fair election. Therefore, even if he deposits bonds with the desire to contest for the election, he cannot rid himself of the duties of the president. Therefore, it is very clear that the president is bound to fulfill that duty. Just because someone else has deposited the bond on behalf of him does not make it impossible for him to exercise the powers of the president.
එනිසා මේ ඔහු වෙනුවෙන් වෙන කෙනෙක් අපමුදල් තැන්පත් කිරීම කියන එක කාරණාව නිසා ඒ ජාන්තර බලතල ක්‍රියාත්මක කිරීමට නොහැකියාවක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ.
The Citizens Power Organization spoke about the controversy surrounding the appointment of Inspector General of Police at a media briefing held in Narahempita today.
දැන් ජනාධිපතිවරයා තමන්ගේ ධූරය සඳහා දිවුරුම් දෙනකොට කියනවා මම
When taking notes as the president, he swore saying, I will fulfill the duties entrusted to me under the constitution without fail. If he is not exercising a power conferred to him by the constitution, then he is not fit to function as the president. It becomes an inability of his part. If that is the case, the president must resign from the post of president on the grounds that he can't do it. Then another interim president can be appointed, and this new interim president could appoint an acting inspector general of police, and the rule of law in the country can be maintained.
කරගෙන මේ රටේ නීති ආධිපත්‍යය පවත්වාගෙන යන්න පුළුවන්.
ඉතිහාසයේ අපි කවුරුත් දන්නවා පොලිස්පතිවරයෙක්.
All of us know that in the past elections have been held under an acting inspector general of police when there was no inspector general of police. There has never been an issue. The election commission has said this as well. If the current president is saying that the presidential election cannot be held without this official, there are two things that we can understand from this. One is that there is a suspicion if a free and fair election will be held. On the other hand, this could be used as a point to suspend the presidential election. The law-abiding citizens of the country should unite and defeat all of this.
දේවල් මේ රටේ නීතිගරුක පුරවැසියෝ එකට පෙළ ගැසිලා පරාජය කළ යුතුයි.
The Mahasangha held a protest march and satyagraha in Colombo today, demanding that Deshabandhu Tennukon continues to serve as the Inspector General of Police. The protest march and satyagraha was led by Venerable Professor Aggalakata Sirisumana Thero. The group marched from the Fort Railway Station to the Peta Bodhiya.
මේ රටේ මේ සියලු මත්ද්‍රව්‍ය මේ හැම දෙයක්ම අපරාධ මේ හැම දෙයක්ම නතර කරන්න
The current IGP and Public Security Minister are the people who worked to ensure the eradication of crime and drug trafficking. Going against the IGP means the destruction of the nation. When someone does the right thing, we must support that. What is the kind of drama they are portraying by changing the top officials, be it the IGP or president? Is this democracy? They are not allowing us to develop the country. When someone is capable of doing their job, we must let them do so. The Mahasangha's request, which is the request of the majority of the religious leaders, that IGP Deshabandhu Tennukon must remain in his post.
Venerable Dr. Omar P. Sobita Thero said that if the president is unable to act according to the order issued by the Supreme Court to suspend the appointment of the IGP and appoint an acting IGP in his stead, the president should resign from his position. He made this statement in Mavanalla today.
We saw that the order was not complied with, and various tactics, including considering the matter in cabinet, were used to postpone the implementation of this order. In the end, we saw that as the presidential candidate was declared, the president quickly submitted his nomination and immediately made a statement saying that he does not have the power to appoint an Inspector General of Police since I am a presidential candidate now. If that is the case, the president is in dereliction of his duties. We clearly state that if the current president cannot abide by the order of the Supreme, if he cannot fulfill the responsibilities of the president, he should immediately resign from his post respectfully and hand over his responsibility to someone else.
These were the views expressed by Defence Secretary retired General Kamal Gunaratna at a media briefing held today.
Underworld leaders and drug kingpins spend a lot of money when a case is filed against them. I am not pointing fingers at everyone, but there is a section of the legal community who takes this money, comes forward to represent them and creates issues for us. For example, I think there are 18 cases filed against STF Commandant Senior DIG Waruna. Similarly, cases have been filed against many officers. We recently made a request to fix the process to allow these officials to carry out their duties. Those activities are underway, and the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Public Security are working towards this. We are helping the Ministry of Public Security in every possible manner to prevent this situation. The legal background for that is being formulated. We can remain optimistic.
The power of the people.
The constant worry about clean water can be a heavy weight. For 470 families in Nagavila, that weight is no more. A new water purification system brings long-awaited relief and a healthier path forward.
Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa accused the incumbent president of protecting people who defied the law and bankrupted Sri Lanka.
The president is openly defying the country's supreme law by protecting and escorting economic terrorist army who bankrupted the nation. They are clearly waiting for them to return to power with their support. When a ruler is unrighteous, disregards the law and protects thieves and criminals, it sets a disastrous example for the entire country. Corruption, fraud, theft and lawlessness spread from the top to down. Therefore, to purify the nation, we must start at the highest levels. I pledge before you that I will fearlessly assume this responsibility.
Opposition leader Sajid Premadasa expressed these views at the Bhikkhu Advisory Council in Polonnaruwa.
Leader of the National People's Power, Anurakumara Dissanayake, expressed these views while addressing the NPP Farmers Rally in Bulneva.
Can Deshabandhu Tennakon wear the uniform of the Inspector General of Police and sign one letter? I know that the table of the Inspector General of Police is full of files. So if you don't accept the order of the Supreme Court, if he is still the Inspector General of Police, why don't you sign one letter with the name Deshabandhu? They know what will happen if he signs it. What are they doing now? Ranil Wickremesinghe is saying that the judge and the speaker should discuss this matter and resolve it. Is there a procedure where the speaker and the judge can discuss and resolve disputes in Sri Lanka? Let's say someone is sentenced to prison for murder and he refuses to go to prison. Then they come and say, can't you discuss this with the judge and resolve it? Ranil wants to resolve disputes like that. We are thankful about the fact that the Supreme Court has not had any discussion with the speaker, and we hope that no discussion will take place in the future as well. You remember a judgment delivered by Sarath N. Silva when he was the Chief Justice. He gave a judgment ordering for the price of fuel to be reduced to 100 rupees. The government said that they do not accept that decision. Then the Supreme Court itself changed their decision. The judgment that was implemented was the judgment of the Supreme Court that changed the amount from 100 rupees. That was the judgment. What is the judgment here? The judgment states that Deshabandhu Tennakon cannot continue to function as the Inspector General of Police. It must be implemented now. Any department in the country can have an issue like this. Then the next most senior official can be appointed. The IGP is suspended. Then what can be done? The next most senior officer is appointed to carry out his duties. Why is Ranil Wickremesinghe saying that he only wants Deshabandhu? He does not want him to fulfill the responsibilities of the IGP. He is needed to do Ranil's work. Deshabandhu is needed for that.
Propaganda Secretary of Dayasiri Jayasekara's Humane People's Alliance said that they have decided to support the Samagi Janabala Vegya in the upcoming presidential election.
24 parties have formed an alliance with the Humane People's Alliance. We, the leaders of these 24 parties, have decided to support the Samagi Janabala Vegya in the upcoming presidential election under the banner of the Humane People's Alliance. The decision has been made and discussions regarding the alliance are ongoing. Recently, Dayasiri Jayasekara returned as the General Secretary of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. This development has led to Sajid Premadasa gaining the support of both Dayasiri Jayasekara and the Sri Lanka Freedom Party.
Independent parliamentarian, former Minister Roshan Ranasinghe is also preparing to contest the upcoming presidential election. Now, speaking at a press briefing today, a representative of the National Consumers Association expressed these views.
Roshan Ranasinghe is the only minister in the cabinet who has a backbone. He has prepared everything to contest the upcoming presidential election and plans to make a statement to the country in the coming days. He will address the nation and announce his candidacy as an independent candidate for the presidential election.
What decision will the alliance formed by Vimal, Gamampila, Vasu and Dilith make? This is what they had to say.
We hope to reveal our candidate and other related matters at our convention that will be held at the Sugadadasa Stadium on the 4th. Following this, several changes in the political arena will be made. We will see to what extent we can strengthen our camp so that other political forces are unable to ignore it.
නෑ මෙතන ඉන්නත් පුළුවන් මෙතන නොඉන්නත් පුළුවන් විධායක සභාව තීරණය කරන්න.
ඔබතුමාලගේ විධායක සභාවේ ඉන්න කෙනෙක්ද?
ඕනම දෙයක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. විධායක සභාව කරන්න ඉන්න දේවල් අපි දන්නේ නෑනේ.
කරෂුට් කෙනෙක් එන්නේ නෑ.
කරෂුට් කියන්නේ සංගවාගෙන ඉන්න අපේක්ෂකයෙක් නිසික වෙලාවෙදී එළියට ගියේ නොවෙන්න බැරිද?
දැන් ඔබතුමාලා කොටාවේ මහත්තයා දිනා ඒ විදිහට තමයි.
Unfortunately, hopes were dashed. Every couple gets married with the promise of being there for each other until their death. The wife and the lover are two different people. The Gotabaya we knew before the election was not the person after he was elected. The experience we all face after getting married is what we experienced after appointing a government.
Ranil, the president. 10 teams. 23 matches. ICC Women's T20 World Cup Bangladesh 2024 coming soon.
Welcome back to the news. A growing geopolitical storm is brewing in the Indian Ocean, with China and India vying for control of a potentially lucrative underwater resource located within the Sea of Sri Lanka. At the heart of the dispute is the Alphanese-Nikitin seamount, a massive underwater mountain rich in cobalt, a critical mineral for the burgeoning electric vehicle industry.
International maritime data reveals that the Chinese research vessel Xiangyang 3 has been operating in close proximity to the seamount, which Sri Lanka claims as part of its continental shelf. Simultaneously, India has expressed interest in exploring the region and was previously granted permission by the International Seabed Authority. However, this approval was revoked upon realizing the seamount fell within Sri Lanka's territorial claims. The seamount, located approximately 1,050 kilometers from Sri Lanka and 1,350 kilometers from India, is estimated to contain billions of dollars worth of cobalt, nickel, manganese and copper. Sri Lanka asserted its rights to the region in 2009, but India countered with its own claims a year later. According to international maritime traffic data, the Chinese ship Xiangyang 3 was in the Bay of Bengal waters yesterday. Certain Indian media outlets reported the ship's involvement in surveillance activities near India. However, meticulous examination of the vessel's route to the Bay of Bengal confirms its origin near the Alphanese-Nikitin seamount. Based on a 14-day data set, the Chinese ship maintained a distance of approximately 600 kilometers from Alphanese-Nikitin. International law defines the continental shelf as the submerged extension of a country's landmass. According to established determinations, Alphanese-Nikitin falls within the Sea of Sri Lanka. Geographically, Alphanese-Nikitin is situated 1,350 kilometers from India and a closer 1,050 kilometers from Sri Lanka. India submitted a 15-year exploration request accompanied by a $500,000 fee to the International Seabed Authority. Upon considering the application, the ISA determined that the seamount lies within the continental shelf of another nation and consequently denied India's request. Sri Lanka formally declared its continental shelf rights in the Alphanese-Nikitin region, rich in minerals including the highly valuable cobalt, to the United Nations in May 2009. India presented its counterclaims in May 2010. Against this backdrop, the recent activities of the Chinese research vessel in the region have drawn significant attention. The Afanese Nicotine Seamount encompasses an area of 3,000 square kilometers composed of 150 substantial formations. It has been confirmed to contain significant deposits of cobalt, nickel, manganese and copper. Cobalt, an essential component in rechargeable batteries for smartphones, laptops and electric vehicles, underscores the mineral's strategic importance. Foreign ministers from Australia, India, Japan and the United States yesterday said they were seriously concerned about intimidating and dangerous maneuvers in the South China Sea and pledged to bolster maritime security in the region.
The joint statement came after talks between the so-called Quad countries in Tokyo, attended by Australia's Penny Wong, India's Subramaniam J. Shankar, Japan's Yoko Kamikawa and Antony Blinken from the US. In security talks between the US and Japan on Sunday, the two allies labelled China the greatest strategic challenge facing the region. The ministers said in a statement, which did not directly mention China, "We are seriously concerned about the situation in the East and South China Seas and reiterate our strong opposition to any unilateral actions that seek to change the status quo by force or coercion." They also expressed serious concern about the militarization of disputed features and coercive and intimidating maneuvers in the South China Sea, including dangerous use of Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels. Meanwhile, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. J. Shankar said the Quad is now deeply and systematically embedded in the foreign policy of the four countries. The Quad yesterday agreed to expand a maritime domain awareness initiative to the Indian Ocean to bolster security and counter illegal activities, even as the grouping challenged China's aggressive behavior by reiterating its commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific region where no country dominates. He emphasized the importance of all countries working to take practical measures to reduce the risks of misunderstanding and miscalculation.
A new analysis by UK-based Debt Justice shows that Sri Lanka's bondholders are said to be repaid significantly more than government creditors, such as China, under the in-principle restructuring deal agreed in early July.
The Newsfirst Finance Report.
The calculations by UK-based Debt Justice, together with Sri Lankan campaigners Yukti and Institute for Political Economy, find that bondholders will be repaid 80 cents for every dollar lent using the IMF's own net present value concept. This rises to 98 cents if Sri Lanka's economy grows more than expected by the IMF. In contrast, government creditors such as China are set to receive 67 cents for every dollar lent, with no increase in payments if economic growth is higher. Newsfirst spoke to Dhananath Fernando from Advocata Institute to gain a deep understanding of the calculations.
There has been some conversation that we are going to pay more to the bondholders than the bilateral creditors when it comes to the net present value. We have to keep in mind about two things. First is, what we have agreed with the bondholders is based on few scenarios. What we are going to pay for the bondholders if our economy performs in accordance with the IMF projections versus whether we are performing lower or higher. What we are going to pay back to the bondholders is different. But what we have pretty much agreed with the official creditor committee or the bilateral creditors is pretty much a straightforward deal. So it is the call for the bilateral creditors in which scenario that they are going to measure, how are they going to basically get paid when it comes to this in this debt restructuring process. Number two is, there's also what the bilateral creditors are basically lending for Sri Lanka, what they have collected as taxpayer money, but when it comes to the commercial creditors, that's their private money. So we have to also consider that, because we cannot expect a haircut from the bilateral creditors, because that's basically their taxpayer money. If they give a complete haircut on the bilateral credit, then there will be political instability in those countries, because that their taxpayer money, their taxpayers may not be very happy with giving debt relief for lower middle income countries like Sri Lanka.
According to the analysis, Debt Justice said that the debt relief being considered acceptable by the IMF will leave Sri Lanka paying twice as much as Zambia as a proportion of government revenue, and leave Sri Lanka trapped with some of the highest external debt payments in the world for years to come. This level of debt payments will leave Sri Lanka spending over 25% of government revenue on external debt payments. At this level, Sri Lanka will remain one of the most indebted countries in the world, even after debt restructuring.
There has been comparison with countries like Zambia and Sri Lanka on the bilateral debt relief that we have received, and also some to an extent in the private creditors. That we have to be very cautiously compare, because Zambia is in a way a lower income country, but Sri Lanka is a lower middle income country. So our country profiles are completely coming from two different categories. So probably the debt restructuring treatment may not be the same for countries like Sri Lanka versus countries like Zambia.
The Newsfirst Finance Report.
Several infants and mothers were injured when a concrete mixture fell onto the roof of the neonatal ward in the Monoragala District Hospital, and the roof collapsed onto the infants and their mothers.
Newsfirst correspondent reported that 3 babies and 3 mothers were injured in the incident. A terrifying incident was reported today at the Monoragala District General Hospital when a massive chunk of wet concrete being moved for the construction of the new building at the Monoragala Hospital fell onto the roof of the neonatal ward. The roof of the neonatal ward had then collapsed onto the babies and mothers inside the ward. 3 mothers and their babies have been transferred to a specialized care unit following the incident. This is how the construction of the new building of the Monoragala District General Hospital was being carried out right next to the neonatal ward of the hospital. Police confirmed that while the babies were not physically harmed, they were covered in cement debris. Investigations have revealed that the concrete mixture was for a nearby 9-story building under construction. The cement was being pumped to lay a concrete layer when it collapsed onto the hospital roof. This incident has highlighted the dangerous proximity of the construction site to the neonatal ward. Questions are being raised about the hospital's safety protocols, particularly given the vulnerable patients housed in the ward. Were the required safety standards followed at this construction site, located right next to the neonatal ward of the Monoragala District General Hospital? How is it that the lives of newborns and their mothers were being put at such a risk? Who would bear the responsibility for this incident?
රටක් ලෙස ඔබත් මමත් දකින සිහිනය කුමක්ද? නිසැකින්ම සුබවාදී යහපත් හෙටක්. ඒ සිහිනය මේ රට ගොඩනගන්නට ලැබෙන අවස්ථාවක්. එක්ව ජයගනිමු. ගම්මැද්ද රට නගන ජන පෞර.
The unveiling ceremony of the Silk Route painting donated to the RASSL was held in Colombo yesterday.
The unveiling ceremony of Silk Route painting donated to the Royal Asiatic Society of Sri Lanka by Dr. Karunasena Kodituakku was held in Colombo yesterday. This was followed by a lecture conducted by consultant pediatrician Dr. Ajit Amarasinghe.
The last delegation which went from Sri Lanka to China was on the 18th August 1459. And surprisingly, the name of the prince who went from Sri Lanka to China was Ba Nena, according to the book. So you can see the similarity between Ba Nena and Ya Ba Nena. He was an adopted son of Parakramabahu VI. And this book says he settled down in Guangdong province, marrying a Persian prince. So I think the important discussions point would be, did the Chinese army engage in undiplomatic in Sri Lanka, or did they act in self-defense? Why did they kill the captured king? Why didn't the Chinese appoint a viceroy or a puppet king in Sri Lanka, but appointed the king selected by the people of Sri Lanka instead? Why is this incident not adequately documented in?
Professor Antonina from the Jagiellonian University, Poland, also presented her lecture during the event.
Can Sri Lanka become the second Dubai? Also a completely
artificial city right in the middle of the desert. Everything has to be transported, created from the scratch, from zero. It's not a natural hub of civilization, right? Like China or India, built upon the riverbanks of great rivers, which are a lifeline to those civilizations. That is, of course, a very difficult question and a very difficult challenge. But I do believe personally, basing on my own experience, basing on meetings with young Sri Lankan people, that this country has a great, great potential. It has many advantages that many European countries do not have.
Several members of the Royal Asiatic Society of Sri Lanka and other stakeholders were also present at the event.
The issuing of the commemorative stamp and first day cover for the 80th anniversary of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science was held in Colombo yesterday.
The Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science celebrated 8 years of service excellence in advancing and promoting science in Sri Lanka. Chief guest architect Neela De Zoysa shared her insights at the event.
Way back in 2005, when I was the Honorary Secretary of the SLIA, it was I who saw the importance and had the burning desire to document the history of the SLIA. I took this challenge upon myself. I sourced funds for the publication and commenced research on this journey, along with the editor, architect, planner, Viranjan Kurukula Surya. On a directive from Council, I researched for 2 years to gather information by carrying out video interviews of past presidents and prominent members of the SLIA, going through archival records and old photographs. I even went as far as the RIBA archives through its then president, Jack Pringle, who was in effect, the RIBA was in effect the parental body of the Ceylon Institute of Architects that eventually became the Sri Lanka Institute of Architects after the Incorporation Act in 1976. The publication, The Architect, 1957 to 2007, made its appearance in a black linen cover, gilded in gold foil, in time for the 50th anniversary celebrations of the SLIA.
83rd General President of Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science, Ramani D. Wijayasekara, shared her views on the history of the Ceylon Association for Science.
Our story began when two visionary individuals, Dr. N.G. Baptist, a committee member of the Chemical Society of Ceylon, and his friend and colleague, Mr. L.J.D. Fernando, from the Natural History Society, put forward the idea for the establishment of a scientific association. When the idea was discussed at the committee meeting of the Chemical Society on 9th October 1943, several national organizations and key scientific personnel had fully supported it. So to get things going, an advertisement was placed in the Times of Ceylon on 4th July 1944, inviting all interested scientists to attend a meeting for the formation of an association of scientists. This pivotal meeting took place on Saturday, 29 July 1944 at 4:30 p.m. in the Chemistry Lecture Theatre of the University of Ceylon, presently the University of Colombo, on Thurston Road, Colombo 3. The gathering was attended by 75 dedicated individuals, mainly from 5 scientific associations, and they were enrolled as the founding members. With this, the Ceylon Association for Science was born. Dr. D.N. Wadia, an Indian scientist and head of the Department of Ceylon Geological Survey, was elected as its first general president, and Dr. N.G. Baptiste and Mr. L.J.D. Fernando as the general secretaries.
The commemorative stamp and the first day cover for the 80th anniversary of the Sri Lanka Association for the Advancement of Science was also issued during the event.
31 leading institutions in the country have been awarded Authorized Economic Operator Tier 1 certificates in recognition of their exemplary compliance with customs regulations and secure business operations.
The Authorized Economic Operator Tier 1 certification is a prestigious designation granted to businesses that meet stringent standards for financial stability, record keeping, customs compliance and security. These certified companies will now enjoy expedited customs procedures, priority treatment and reduced inspections, streamlining their import and export processes. A notable highlight is the inclusion of 8 companies from the Capital Maharaja Group Limited among the 31 recipients. Eslon Lanka Private Limited, PE Plus, Kevilton, Toughline, AF Jones, Harrison Colombo and Kansai Paint Lanka are the group's certified entities. Group Director and COO of the Capital Maharaja Group, S.C. Veerasekara, along with directors Udayakumar Ratnasabapathy and Andrew Nyanamani and a group of subsidiary heads were present at the award ceremony. The certification is expected to significantly enhance the efficiency and competitiveness of these companies in the global market.
US President Joe Biden has criticized the extreme opinions of the Supreme Court as he proposed sweeping reforms, including the removal of life appointments.
In a speech in Austin, Texas, US President Joe Biden said that the extreme opinions handed down by the court have undermined law and established civil rights principles and protections.
President Johnson understood what President Lincoln understood in his own time, that the courts would determine the scale and scope of our laws. Over 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, President Johnson vowed, in his words, to do this job that Lincoln started, by challenging the court to live up to its constitutional responsibility. He did that by nominating Thurgood Marshall as the first black justice of the Supreme Court. And by aggressively defending civil rights throughout the courts. But now we live in a different era. In recent years, extreme opinions that the Supreme Court has handed down have undermined long-established civil rights principles and protections. And now there's an extreme movement and agenda called Project 2025. Well, by the way, they're serious, man. They're planning another onslaught attacking civil rights in America.
Biden has proposed an 18-year term for justices and an enforceable ethics code to restore trust and accountability. He, however, faces a difficult task to gain congressional approval given Republican control of the House of Representatives. The proposals come after the current conservative-dominated court issued a series of major decisions, including upending the constitutional right to abortion and allowing presidents wide-ranging immunity from prosecution for official acts.
Security forces in Venezuela have fired tear gas and rubber bullets against people protesting over Sunday's disputed election result. Thousands of people descended on central Caracas, some walking for miles from slums on the mountains surrounding the city towards the presidential palace. Protests erupted in the Venezuelan capital the day after President Nicolas Maduro claimed he had won. The opposition had disputed Maduro's declaration of victory as fraudulent, saying its candidate Edmundo Gonzalez won convincingly with 73.2% of the vote. Opposition parties had united behind Gonzalez in an attempt to unseat President Maduro after 11 years in power, amid widespread discontent over the country's economic crisis. A number of Western and Latin American countries, as well as international bodies, including the UN, have called on the Venezuelan authorities to release voting records from individual polling stations. Diplomats from 6 other Latin American countries, Chile, Costa Rica, Panama, Peru, the Dominican Republic and Uruguay have also been withdrawn from what Foreign Affairs Minister Evangel described on social media as interventionist actions and statements.
In some news from the Paris Olympics, Sri Lanka's Viren Netthasinghe and Kyle Abesinghe participated in the preliminary rounds of the badminton and swimming events at the Paris Olympics today.
Sri Lanka's Viren Netthasinghe faced Spain's Pablo Avian in a Group G game of the Paris Olympics 2024 badminton men's singles competition. Pablo Avian won the first round 21-9 and the second round 21-19. Accordingly, Avian won the match 2-0. Viren Netthasinghe failed to qualify for the second round after losing both games in the preliminary round. Sri Lanka's Kyle Abesinghe participated in the men's 100-meter freestyle swimming heats at the 2024 Paris Olympics. The preliminary round consisted of 10 heats, with Sri Lanka's Kyle Abesinghe participating in the 4th heat. Kyle recorded a time of 51.42 seconds and was placed 8th.
And that's a wrap of Primetime News on TV1 for tonight.
Thank you for watching and good night.
Night.